AEFL, American Elite Fantasy League.
My name's Trevor Freimeyer. Team name, Marshall Matters.
Justin Yates, team captain, Green Eggs and Cane.
Brandon Ultimus, the Paul Baker Dream Team.
Ethan Barr, team captain, former Child Stars.
Captain Tanner Guthrie, team Old Smuggler.
Tyler Boner, and I am the Raging Boners.
My name is
Ben Parker.
and I'm putting together a special team, and I need me 8 soldiers. 8 Jewish American soldiers. Once we're in enemy territory, as a bushwhacking guerrilla army, we're going to be doing one thing and one thing only.
Win football games.
The Sankey Legs, Adam Edwards.
Will Wetzel, helmet to helmet contact.
Jared Fichter, LFPB.
Chase Kraft, my Cobb, and your Bush, and your host, and our weekly review starts now. And welcome back, fellas, to Season 3, Week 1 of the AFL, and I couldn't be happier to be back in front of your screens, even though I returned to my losing ways like last year as I take the loss there to Fichter 118 to 104.1, while the former Child Stars escapes the first week with a close win over Grand Slam Breakfast Squad 128.1 to 122.9. Tanner returns to his winning ways from the previous 2 years, scoring the highest point total of the week, beating Trevor, Marshall Matters, to 162.5 to 120.7. The Raging Boners come out of nowhere this week, stealing the win from Inglorious Bastards, 132.3 to 126.2. And may I add that Boner actually had the second highest point total of the week. Now, going from the highest point totals of the week, we go down to the lowest point total of the week in helmet-to-helmet contact there, losing to Paul Baker's Dream Team as they dream up the Week 1 win there, 125.3 to 85.6. While Green Eggs and Cam there without Cam Newton fall to the Sankey Legs, 111.8 to 97.3. Now we had some close games, but let's get into it a little bit deeper as I got my ass kicked, like I said, by Jared. But, you know, Fitzgerald doesn't get any targets till the fourth quarter. Ben Tate hurts his knees, or hurts one of his knees, bound to hurt another knee later on in the year. But you throw in the fact that Phillip Rivers played a very tough Arizona defense and didn't do much for you. While on the other hand, Jared had Luck, who scored a lot of points. His running backs not so much, but you know, Adrian Peterson, it's week 1, you know he's going to catch on. And even though he left no Sean Marino and Sproles on the bench who scoring big points, I think overall his running backs are in good shape, as his wide receivers also did a hell of a job. And I believe it was Jordy Nelson who had the most targets for the Green Bay Packers in the week, along with Pierre Garçon, who I thought might actually lose receptions to Sean Jackson, but that doesn't prove to be the case because Washington's going to be down so often that they're going to be forced to throw. So Jared picks up the big win there to start off the year over me. While looking at Boner and Ben's game, kind of had to question Ben a little bit with Deshaun Jackson while he was on a bench in a PPR league. He's going to get a lot of receptions. Torrey Smith might be a good receiver and the top receiver there in Baltimore, but just doesn't ever pick up the receptions that Deshaun Jackson does. So a little bit curious there. Tight end-wise, Clay, the Miami tight end that Ben has, also didn't do very well. But then again, last year he had the most touchdowns for the Miami Dolphins receiving-wise. So I think, you know, it's just week 1. And they still got the win over the Patriots there, so that's a huge plus for them. So I expect Clay to pick it up throughout the rest of the year. Not to mention, Rodgers, Ben's quarterback, also played against the tough defense of the Seattle Seahawks. So Ben, I wouldn't be too worried. You barely lost in week 1, while Boner had the second highest point total. You mix it up a little bit. You play someone else, Ben. You pick up the win. While Tyler had big points for Stafford and his running backs. Definitely needing Tavion Austin and Vincent Jackson doing a little bit more for you down the road, but you still get the week 1 win. Looking at Barr and Dustin's game, I think it just plain came down to the fact that Eddie Lacy got hurt. If he doesn't get hurt, he's maybe bound for maybe a touchdown if he's lucky, but definitely some more receptions, definitely more rushing yards. And to have a game where you only lose by like 6 points, that's a little tough, considering the fact that Patterson, Barr's main wide receiver, actually ran for 102 yards and a touchdown. You take that away, and Dustin, even with Lacy getting hurt and Demaryius Thomas not having a big game, you still win that game if it wasn't for that big play that he had. And even Barr had Dez Bryant, who didn't play very well, so that Demaryius Thomas and Dez Bryant points kind of cancel out. But in the end, Barr escapes there with a win. Looking a little more into Will and Brandon's game, Will definitely going to hurt you there with the defense scoring you -7 points. Matt Ryan looked really good. That's got to be, exciting for the rest of the year, as he didn't have as good a year as you thought he would have last year, but on the right track for this year. I'm curious to see if Victor Cruz is going to pick it up, as he didn't have very many receptions. It was only targeted 6 times. You had Heath Miller at your starting tight end, which I've seen you drop now, which is good because you only had 4 targets last week against the Cleveland Browns. That's a little worrisome when he's only getting 4 targets. But, in the end, you still had Arian Foster, who didn't manage to get hurt and scored you some good points. Now, Brandon on the other hand, you have some excellent options on the bench. You have Andy Dalton and Steve Smith, and your running backs there also had a good game for you. So you might want to start looking for some trade bait to help boost up your team there when you have such good players like Steve Smith and Andy Dalton on your bench. Just something to think about. Now, looking into Trevor and Tanner's game, Tanner just simply has the better Patriots running back there in Vereen, as Trevor's Ridley is not very well trusted with all his fumbling issues. And then to take that step further, Trevor has the Kansas City defense, who they might have been a fluke a little bit last year. New coach, new hope, players just trying to rise to the occasion, just that whole new confidence with everything being so new. As Kansas City's D just didn't look good last week, and Jamal Charles didn't look as good either. But then again, he is coming off an ankle injury, so that's something to watch. But in the end, Calvin Johnson, Marshawn Lynch, and Russell Wilson, just all too good for Tanner. As I said earlier, he scores the highest point total of the week. Then going into Yates and Adams' game, Yates, obviously there with Doug Martin, only 2 points. You got to wonder if you're going to start putting Ellington in the starter role instead of Doug Martin. Doug Martin, going back to last year, didn't play very well, while Ellington's coming on. He's also catching passes out of the backfield. So that's something to think about going forward. Also, the tight end matchup there, Witten with Yates and Cameron with Edwards, thought that would get a little bit more points, but not so much. But I will say Cleveland ended up having all their tight ends together go for 90 yards receiving, so you kind of wonder what would have happened had Cameron got more of those targets there. And then also on the bench for Edwards, you have Hawkins, who you almost wonder if he's going to take all the receptions from Josh Gordon. But then again, NFL's reviewing the drug policy, and you might see Josh Gordon come back later this year, which in that case, Tanner's already picked up Josh Gordon, so we can't even have the conversation there about who's going to pick him up. But, fellas, it was a close week overall. It's disappointing to start off the week with a loss, but for now, we just got to move on and get to this week's hard hit of the week. And this week's hard hit of the week has got to go to Dustin. I mean, if you don't lose Eddie Lacy, you definitely win this game, I think, against Barr. Not to mention, if Barr's player Patterson doesn't have 102 yards rushing as a wide receiver and that 72-yard run as a touchdown, you win without that. So for this week's hard hit of the week, you got to give it to Dustin for his just plain and simple bad luck against Barr for this week. But fellas, for now, let's get into next week's matchups. Alright, fellas, looking into the Week 2 matchups, it looks like I'll be facing off against the 1-0 Sankey Legs, as Edwards has the higher projected total, 124 to 121. The 0-1 Green Eggs and Cam get Cam Newton back this week, facing off against the 1-0 former Child Stars, with Barr getting the nod here, 148 to 127. Then you have the 2 0-1 teams, Marshall Matters, facing off against the Inglorious Bastards, with Ben getting the higher projected total points here, 120 to 116. The 1-0 Old Smuggler takes on the 0-1 Helmet-to-Helmet Contact, the 2 teams with the highest scoring points and the lowest scoring points from last week, with Tanner getting the nod here, 149 to 120. Liquor in the front, Poker in the back takes on the Grand Slam Breakfast Squad, with the 0-1 Breakfast Squad getting the slight nod here at 158 to 157. And the surprising 1-0 Raging Boners also takes on another 1-0 team, Paul Baker's Dream Team, with Brandon getting the higher projected points here, 136 to 124. And fellas, that is our matchups for Week 2. Alright fellas, so that'll do it for the Week 1 wrap up. And as always, I'll see you next week. Fuck you.
Alley Cat Production.